Hi guys, it's Jordan from B&P Campers. I'm just going to do your handover video on your Mobilvetta Top Driver 52. It's based on the Fiat Ducato 2003 chassis. So under the bonnet we've got your engine battery over on the left hand side, brake fluid attached to the servo just behind that, just there, and your engine oil from this cap just here at the top. Your engine oil dipstick is this yellow topped one just down here. Power steering fluid sits in this reservoir just at the very front, and that should be like a deep red colour in there. Engine coolant sits up here in this reservoir on the right hand side, and you can see there the engine's cold at the moment and perfect level just there between the minimum and maximum lines. And the last one is your washer fluid. Air filter sits inside this box just here, and you've got various sort of fuses and relays in this little box underneath here. Chassis plate sits down here, and the paint code is just there, 224, which is the style of white that it's got. So on the near side of the vehicle we've got your diesel filling point, so you will need the ignition key to get that to open up. Inside the passenger door there's never really very much to show, which there isn't, so the majority of the stuff that I'll show you will be around on the driver's side. Gas locker is the next one just here, so we've got the gas bottle in there itself. You've got 5 years on these pigtail hoses, so you've got till 28 to replace this one. It's just something we recommend. So to turn the bottle on, we go anti-clockwise round to the left, that turns the bottle on, and clockwise round to the right turns it off. You need to make sure that you leave the dropout holes at the back nice and clear, and that you keep this nice and strapped up and tight, especially whilst you're driving, and to turn the bottle off before you start driving as well. Then you've got your fresh water filling point just here. So there you go, you can lock this as well. And your toilet cassette locker right here at the very back. So if I push the cassette all the way back in for now, so I can show you it from the start. So to take the actual cassette out, you push down on the little yellow button there and pull towards you. That will then release the entire thing. All you need to know from there is a couple of things. So to actually empty the cassette out, you empty it from this point just here. So you twist this round like I've just done and take off the yellow cap to drain it. When you're physically draining it out, you should be holding down the little yellow tab, or the little yellow button there. Hold that down whilst you're emptying it. And the last thing I tend to point out is that you've got a rubber seal under here, which is basically the seal between the cassette and the toilet inside the van. So if you keep this lubricated, you'll stop it from leaking and causing a lot of mess that you obviously don't want. So keep that lubricated with a silicone lubricant or a silicone spray, and that should keep that from cracking and getting, just breaking up over the years basically. Same goes for if you do get yourself some silicone lubricant, which I would definitely recommend. Any of these little rubber seals on any locker keeps it all from getting, it stops it from breaking up basically. It just helps it out over the years. Behind the bike rack just here we've got your this is the vent for your boiler. So to take this off, it does show you on the front, but to take it off, push in with your thumb and then pull towards you. That will then release it. Try not to drop it like I did, but that is the vent for the boiler. So that's how you need to make sure that's off before you start trying to light the boiler up. This is the pulley for your wastewater drain, so you can push it in to close the drain back off again, or pull it out to open it up so that it'll all just drain out underneath, and that drains out just there from that big hole there. So that is the wastewater drain. The freshwater drain is, if I just show you where, it's behind that little flap just there is a little turny dial basically, but that's where your freshwater drain off point is, just there. In this cupboard it is just storage, just absolutely loads of storage in there. These two vents just here are both for your fridge, both labelled up Electrolux, which is the brand of the fridge. You don't really need to know anything about it apart from the fact that if you have the fridge lit up on gas, you will feel a little bit of warm air coming out the top right hand side of this little cover here, which is the cover for your exhaust for the fridge. The 240 volt hookup point, this one just here, so the hookup goes in. That will then give you access to using anything that's mains powered, or 3-pin plugs, etc. In this little cupboard, which is directly behind it, you will also notice that you've got your trip switch in there, and various kind of warnings and things like that. But all you need to know really is that that trip switch in there is the main trip for the mains hookup. Light switches in there, so that turns on your lights inside there. And if we carry on, this locker just here, I will say you don't really need to know much about it, if I'm completely honest. All it is the back of your space heater. There's a couple of fuses and bits and pieces in there, again, which you don't really need to know about. But this is basically just to give you good access to the back of the space heater, which you don't normally get in your average motorhome. So if you did, if the fan gave up on this or whatever, really easy to get to. But that's the only reason they put this here, really, just for ease of access. And in the driver's door, you've got your actual Mobilvetta branded chassis plate there. So if you needed to actually get the exact figures for this vehicle at any point, that's the one there. You would actually read the one just inside the driver's door. So the swivel seat base is fitted. So I'll just show you. You've got this little red handle here which pulls towards you. Once you pull it towards you, the whole seat swivels around and locks nicely back into place when you need it to. So the cab itself is very, very simple. You've got the 5-speed manual gearbox. Reverse is lift up and over to the top left. Your hazard warning lights is from the center dial, or switch, sorry. You've got a reasonably modern looking Pioneer head unit. I would also just bear in mind that we tend to, if you're not going to be using the vehicle for a little while, press this little button in the bottom right hand corner just to pop the radio front off, because that will stop the radio from ever being able to draw any power, which is why a lot of people just leave these in the when they're not using it, leave it in the glove box. But you don't have to do that. It's just a way of double checking that you're definitely not going to drain the battery out, because these do sit around sometimes. The lights you turn on from the left hand stalk just here, so you've got your side lights and then main beam. Washers and wipers are on the right, and that's about it really. Just sort of your average kind of fan settings and things, heater settings. Right, so you have got the electric adjusting mirrors on this one, so you can select which mirror you want to move and then just basically move this around like a joystick. And under the steering wheel, you've got your bonnet release handle just there, and your steering column adjustment just next door to that there. Okay, so I'll jump in the van now. So one thing I will say is that this van is really, well, it's just been really, really well kept. The condition of all the cupboards and the worktops and things like that is fantastic, really, for the age of it. Someone's clearly loved it throughout its life, which is always a good thing. So straight away, as soon as you come through this door, you've got above your head the Mobilvetta. It's a, I can never pronounce this correctly, but they made a lot control panels and power supply units and things back in these days, so very common thing to have there. So there's no main on and off switch on these. All you've got is 2 on and off switches here and 2 on the right. So you've got lights, water pump. This one's to do with the fridge, but you don't really need to think of it like that, and I'll explain that in a minute. And auxiliary power. So once you've got all 4 of those on, you'll be able to use anything that runs from the aux power, so that's the 12 volt bits and pieces, and your lights. And the only other one that you've got is this switch just here, which when you turn that on, you'll get this little light here come on, which says 12 VCC. So once you've turned that on, you'll then be able to use the fan for the heater. Now, don't ask me why that's been put on there afterwards. I can only imagine that they've probably had an issue with that at some point and just basically run an extra cable, which is a lot easier than, you know, taking the whole thing to pieces. But you know, if you want to use the the heater's fan, not the fan's heater, if you want to use the heater's fan, turn this button on just here and this little 12-volt light will come on. So you then also got fuses for each one here. So fuses correlate to the little pictures next door to them. So, you know, just basically if you get any issues with any of those specific appliances, just, you know, check the fuse that it's corresponding with. And a little test switch. So when you press and hold on the test switch, it will tell us the battery voltage. So the battery voltage is very, very good, nearly at maximum. And the freshwater level is 3/4 full or 2/3 full. All right. So that is basically the control panel. When you want to get out of the vehicle and lock the van up again, just turn all the switches off and that's it really. So that is your control panel. Once you've got all those bits and pieces on, like I said, you will then be able to use your light switches. They will all come to life. Any lights underneath any cabinets and things, there you go, they're all on, so all working absolutely as they should. Windows, one thing I will point out on these windows, like most of them, is that you've got a little button on each handle there. If you don't press the button in before you try and open it, you will break it. So just really important to press those buttons in. And that is how your windows work. They work on a latch sort of system. So push it open to wherever you want it and then bring it back. The blinds and fly screens on these are, I think, the same all the way around. So I'll just show you this one. So if you want the blackout blind, squeeze on these together and lift it up to the top. That will then be completely blacked out there. If you then want the fly screen instead, you can lock them in up here. This is just one way of doing it. Squeeze these back in again and the fly screen will come down with it. You can, of course, if you don't want to do it that way, you can just bring the fly screen down by hand, but they do need to clip into these little bits here in order to be locked in. So I'll leave that one up there unlocked. So there you go. And as I said, that's the same on all the windows there, all the way around. So the 3-burner hob up here, you will need an ignition of some description to light any 3 of these up, because there isn't an igniter with it. They just don't come with them. So just your standard kind of little diagram telling you what does what. Smev, or however you say the word, have been making these cookers for absolutely years. So I'm pretty sure they still make them now. So first things first, if you want to use the boiler and you want to get hot water and things like that, you need to make sure you do one thing first, which is basically come up to the control panel, turn your water pump switch on, and then just come over to the tap and pull the cold water through and then the hot, which might sound a bit silly, but there is a really good reason for it. So I'll do that. So cold water's got good pressure. Check the hot. Hot's got good pressure as well. Turn it off and just make sure that the pump turns itself off, which it has done straight away. So doing that basically proves to us that the boiler is full of water. Now, if we lit the boiler up, which is down here by the way, this is the boiler. If we lit the boiler up and it was completely empty of water, it would overheat and you'd be forking out for a new boiler pretty quickly. So it's really important to make sure that the boiler is actually full of water, and the only way to do that is by doing that, like I just said, making sure that there's water coming out on both hot and cold sides. If there isn't water coming out the hot side, it means that the boiler isn't quite full. First thing to check is that your little yellow tab down there is laying down flat like it is now, because that means that it will be accepting water. If you lifted that upright, all the water from the boiler would drain out onto the floor. So that's the first thing to check. Second thing to check would just to be, make sure that you got enough water in the tank, as in the freshwater tank. And that's about it really. If you still don't get any water coming through, there's probably another issue somewhere else, like a leak somewhere nearer to the pump. So just making sure that you double check the boiler's full is really important. And the other reason that you've got the drain down there is that if it was coming up to winter time and you thought that you might be leaving the van in storage, or you're not going to be near the van for a long period of time, if you think that the boiler might get cold enough that it could freeze, you need to make sure that you drain it out from that point just there so that it doesn't freeze up on you. If the boiler freezes up all of its water inside, it will also break. 9 times out of 10 you're going to be forking out for a new one. So making sure that you check that it's got water in it when you want to use it, and check that you've drained it out before it gets to freezing temperatures is really important. Other than that, they're very low maintenance, and generally speaking, you don't really have to do anything apart from making sure that that cowl cover is off on the outside before trying to light it up. And that's about it, really. So that's your boiler down there. Next door to it, up here, we've got all of your gas isolation taps. So if you thought you had an issue with a specific appliance, you can isolate the gas from there. They have all got a diagram on them telling you what they are. So if I just quickly run you through, you've got space heater, fridge, 3-burner hob, boiler, and whatever that is. What is that? Is there a little hidden oven here somewhere? Oh, not very hidden, but yeah. So this oven here, I don't know why I didn't spot that. So yeah, that's what the oven one is there at the back. So yeah, that's what your isolation taps are. So the boiler controls are inside the cupboard here. So on the left hand side, you've got the water heating on 240 volt electric. So that's when your hookup's plugged in, you can turn the button on there and it'll just start heating up via the 240 volt. If you don't have the hookup plugged in, you can also obviously light it up on the gas just by turning this dial and choosing a temperature. So you got 30 all the way through to 70 degrees, and you just leave it basically. I mean, you probably heard it just then, it lit straight up, and once it gets to the temperature that we've set it to, it will turn itself off. So that is, it's as easy as that. Doesn't get much easier than that. And when you turn it all the way off, it turns itself off. So already, having the boiler there that works on gas and electric is a big plus. And a lot of these, continental built vehicles, Italian ones, German ones, very rarely, two things really, very rarely have electric on the boiler, and also very rarely have a decent sized oven down here. So two things that you've got going for this particular vehicle already. But yeah, so right, so the next thing I'll show you is the fridge. So the fridge itself is very simple. So this is a 3-way fridge, and like I said on the outside, it's an Electrolux fridge. Now Electrolux have been making these as well for years and years. They also make parts for household bits and pieces like extractor fans. I mean, I've got one at my house. So they've been in the game a long time and they know what they're doing. So always helpful to have something like that. So the 3 ways that the fridge works is mains electric, so your 240 volt hookup, 12 volt, which is when your engine's running, and gas. So at the moment, I don't have the engine running, so I can't use a 12 volt. I don't have a hookup plugged in, so I can't use the hookup, but I do have the gas on. So if I go all the way down to the bottom for gas, the igniter starts going automatically, and then all I've got to do is press this button in. We just wait for the ignition to stop. There you go. So as soon as that igniter stops, that means that the thermocouple or the flame failure device has sensed that there's a bit of gas there and that it's lit. All right, so that ignition there cannot turn itself off until there's a flame there. So you can be absolutely sure that that's working when that ignition stops. So at the moment, if we're still down here on gas, it's on and working. You can, if you want to, go outside, put your hand over the vent like I showed you, and double check that. I will also say, because of the age of this particular vehicle, you don't have one of the little sensors. A lot of newer motorhomes that have got a fridge that vents out just underneath a window, there is a sign there which I can imagine probably says something to do with the fridge. A lot of them have got a little switch that won't allow any gas to come through unless the window's shut. So I will point that out. If you have the fridge lit up on gas, I would highly recommend leaving this fridge shut, which I know might seem a little bit annoying at times, but you know, if you open up this window at the back, perfectly fine. It's not going to let any carbon monoxide in whatsoever. But if you do have that window open just there, you know, really they should have fitted one of the little switches there so that you can't use it with the window open. But there you go, that is what it is. They haven't done that, so I would just recommend leaving the window shut when using the fridge. They don't let out much carbon monoxide, or at least they shouldn't, but you know, it's enough to like, you know, it's enough to make me recommend to you to leave the window shut, if that makes sense. So you know, that's just one of those things I have to say, really. Especially if you're going to leave it on gas overnight and stuff like that, it's just not worth the risk. So that's that. So that's how to use it on gas. So at the moment it is lit up on gas. Like I said, you can go outside and put your hand over the vent and double check if you want to. If you have the electric hookup plugged in, I would highly recommend just leaving it there on the electric hookup. You don't have to do anything over this side for that. You just basically select it and it will start cooling down. The 12 volt is slightly different in the fact that the 12 volt doesn't get the fridge cold by itself. So you can't start the engine up, select 12 volt and expect it to get cold when you're driving, because that's not how it works. So the way that these fridges work, this is pretty much all motorhome fridges, the way that it works is that you have to pre-cool this fridge before you leave, either via the gas or the 240 volt. And the reason for that is that the 12 volt is only really good for holding temperature. So whatever temperature you put in the fridge already, the 12 volt will easily keep that temperature, but isn't powerful enough to get it cold by itself. So for example, if you're going to go away on holiday tomorrow morning, I would recommend either hooking the van up on the mains and selecting mains here, leave it overnight, and then when you get to starting the engine up and driving off in the morning, switch over to your 12 volt. If you don't have access to plugging it in on the hookup, light it up on the gas overnight, and that's it. You know, leave it till the morning till you get ready to go, switch over to 12 volt and drive off. And then when you get to where you're going, switch back to one of the other two when you park up. So yeah, that's how these fridges work. So hopefully that makes sense. Sometimes it can take a little bit of getting used to. Same goes for pretty much everything in these vans, really. You know, because it's all new stuff to a lot of people. So, but that's the beauty of these videos, I suppose. You can sort of look back on them. So the cooker just there. You want to see my horrible legs. So the cooker itself is very simple. It's an oven / grill. Well, it's an oven and a grill. So if you want to light it up on the gas, sorry, not light, it's gas only. If you want to light up the grill, is what I meant to say, push in and round to the right, which should, if you give it a little blow in there, it will light up properly. But push in and round to the right for the grill, and in and round to the left for the oven. There you go. A little bit of flame lift there at the back. That will burn off. But there you go, there's your oven at the back there. So I will just say, just try and be careful with these, because, you know, at the end of the day, it's unusual for houses nowadays to have, you know, gas grills and ovens and things like that. But, you know, that's just common sense, really. Just be careful with it. Right, so the last appliance that I need to run you through is the space heater. So the space heater, if I just double check, yeah, space heater is very simple. This is a gas only space heater. If it worked on the mains electric as well, you'd have another set of dials somewhere and it would say 240 volt down there. So it's gas only, and as I mentioned before, you will need your 12 VCC light on up there, which is from the little black dial, or little black switch to the right of the control panel, and then you'll be able to turn it on just like that. So that's the fan. That's what you need to have on, really. You know, once you've lit this what is going on with my words today? Once you've lit this space heater up on the gas, you should always use the fan, because that will pump around that hot air nice and evenly through to any of the little circular vents which will be dotted around all over the place. Got one down there underneath this table. There'll be one in the bathroom. There's one down there. So it just helps to more evenly, you know, disperse the heat, if you like. So to light this particular one up, it's so simple. All you need to do is turn the dial round. If you can hear, you can probably hear the igniter going crazy. All we need to do at this point is push down at about 3 or 4, and then have a little look in there. Basically, I can't quite get it on the camera, but have a little look in there and wait until you see the flame. Once the pilot flame is kicked in, which is what it is when you first push down like that, you can then release it and twist it around to whatever number you like, and wait for the main flame to kick in. And that really is it. That's all you have to do. I just couldn't quite get, the little peephole down here is so difficult to get a good view of the flame on it. It's almost impossible sometimes. So, but that's how to use it. Really simple. Just literally like an old boiler. You just sort of turn it around to start, push down and get your pilot flame, and then lift up and twist it all the way around. After no time at all, the van will be nice and hot. Especially this sort of size of vehicle. You know, it is a small van, so it doesn't take very much to heat it up. I will also say though that, you know, these space heaters are fantastic in my opinion, and would easily heat up the biggest motorhomes you can get, especially the ones with this fan assisted part, where, you know, really you can run these heating ducts as far as you like, and they will still after a little while pump out some nice hot air. So you could have a van 2-3 times this size and it would still warm it up pretty quickly. In the wardrobe above this, 2 things I will just point out to you. Please just be careful around this pipe just here. Again, a little bit outdated in the fact that it's not got a big heat shield around it. So once you've got this lit up on gas, this will become hot, because this is your exhaust, okay, that goes out onto the roof. So just be careful of that. Probably sounds really silly, but just try your best not to get your clothes all the way onto it. Might seem impossible, you know, they are, at the end of the day, they are wrapped up in this heat shield anyway, but it's just something I like to mention. It will get hot. Your TV aerial is up here. This is a standard tilt and turn TV aerial. So you undo the big nut at the top, and then you can push it around and move it to wherever you need to. You then got your TV aerial booster, so that's your signal booster, and that is wired up, because I can see the wires going through to wherever the TV bits are, wherever they might be here. So, well, it looks like somebody's had one here at some point on a bracket, but you've got a 240 volt switch, so if you've got a mains powered telly, you go in that one. 12 volt socket there, and your aerial point there, so that should all be wired in. Yeah, there you go. So that's all wired in just there. So if you wanted to fit a TV to this section here, that's probably the best place for it, because at least then you can see it from here. So there you go. The last thing I'm going to show you is the bathroom. Well, and then I'll just point out some bits on the water tank. Bathroom is super simple. Unfortunately, over the years, the plastic on all motorhomes does get brittle, and you do start to get some bits and pieces flaring up. But, you know, it's just something you need to look out for, really. Just make sure that you're a little bit more careful with it. It's all working absolutely as it should at the moment. No leaks, nothing like that. But it's just something I mention on most of the videos, really. So the toilet itself is the only bit that I ever really run through, because the sink is just a sink. It pulls out to be the shower as well, but you know, it is what it is. It's just hot and cold. The toilet, the flush is this one here. So you press this button down, that will pump around your flush fluid, which is just your fresh water. Twist this open to drain it into the cassette, twist it back, and that is it. So, doesn't get much easier than that. Close all the windows up before we leave. So, yeah, the last thing I'm going to just point out to you is that this tank just here under this little cover is your freshwater tank. So there's not really much to point out on here because, like I said, the freshwater drain is in that cupboard there. But all I will say is that you've got these little prongs in here, which, because on the control panel you've got 4, when you test for the fresh water level, you've got 4 levels that it can show you. That's because you've got 4 prongs inside here. Okay, so each one that the water's touching will be another bar that it will show you up. So I just thought I'd point that out to you, just something I like to show. But that's it really. There's not really much else to show you, I don't think. Put this back in, and then we can put the cushion back in as well. There you go. So, I think I've shown you everything we can. If there, and don't worry, we haven't actually had a good chance to clean it through properly yet after I've done a few bits in here. But yeah, main things really, the boiler bits that I was showing at the start are really important, because if you look after those boilers, they'll be absolutely fine. You don't tend to run into any issues at all with those. But if you don't look after them, you know, they're quite fragile in that sort of sense. Make sure that before you start driving off that all of your skylights are down. So that's up at the moment, so you need to pull those down. Make sure all of your windows are completely closed up, not just a little bit. Skylights are the main one really. I see people driving around with them up all the time, and it does my head in because I know exactly how much they are, and you probably don't want to know how much they are, so please just pull them down before you start driving. That's it. So if there's anything you think I've missed out or anything you'd like going over again, just let us know. But otherwise, we look forward to seeing you soon to collect your van. Thanks very much.